Hey, what's up? This is Zach here at the Genzio Media House with a very special guest from Seattle. Super cool that it took us all the way to Dubai to connect. Matthew from Solana. Before we kind of dive in, would you like to kind of give a brief intro about yourself and kind of your role?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the head of technology at Solana Foundation. Foundation in the Solana ecosystem is kind of the facilitator of the ecosystem. So the network itself, protocol, the operators, and then all the apps and infrastructure on top. And we just try to make technologies that enable businesses and all those entities to operate and helping coordinate things like that. My background is actually in AI. I went to UW.
Let's go.
University of
Go
Washington.
Huskies.
For grad school. So economics and got into ML really early. Worked for Riot Games and a few other game companies, and then started my own company in hearing aids. So nothing to do with
Super cool.
blockchain. It was a basically a recommendation system for your ears. So you can your hearing aid has thousands of parameters, and so yeah, we would do like a direct to consumer play. And then after I moved on to an advisor to that, I joined Solana about 3 years ago. My role has evolved over time. It's very the space moves quickly. So yeah, today I'm just kind of helping where I can across the entire ecosystem.
So talk about that. You said 3 years.
Yeah.
What did you start at year one? Like, what was it like? What was your starting position?
The first thing I was doing was actually this is I can only say so much in my intro, but I was actually working at Unity at the time, and so I was just kind of advising them on like a assets and in game strategy. So like, what do you need? Because at the time they were working on Metaplex and they were going to ship that, so I was just like helping them understand what the needs of different consumer applications would be, and then got more and more into games with them. And then I joined originally just to see what helps with the games part of the shop, but then more and more. I just found that working on other, games touches everything. Everything's a toy for a game that you can use for some sort of game mechanic. So I found myself working more and more on just wider parts of the ecosystem, and eventually, yeah, now I just work on anything.
Anything.
Yeah.
That sounds like a pretty awesome job.
Yeah.
Can you talk about maybe like, what that journey was like? I mean, Solana's been through, a lot, I guess you could say.
Really?
and,
Notice.
and now it's kind of come out as it is the hottest ecosystem right now, period.
Yeah.
So what was that kind of like? I mean, I would love to just like kind of get into your journey and kind of what you went through and everything.
Okay, yeah. I mean, okay. I mean, I when I joined, it was like full time. So I was kind of advising for the first 6 months of being involved, and then I was joined some time in maybe September, and so it's kind of like September of 2021. So from my experience, it was kind of like, okay, it was like the hotness, but like the narrative-based things, like it can kind of, everybody knew that Solana was doing really good things, but you don't quite have the adoption of everything quite yet to hold the ecosystem. And so when the bears started happening and things started going down, and then especially when like FTX happened, it'd been basically down only for and then I don't necessarily just mean markets or whatever, but just like in terms of public perception and all these other like FUD, it was kind of hard to get up every morning, but and like be excited about the conversations I would have that day with external people. But I think there's a distinct difference between that and internally, and a lot of your colleagues and a lot of people in the ecosystem already that you're helping, because I think people that are in the Solana ecosystem, especially during that time, didn't accidentally get there. Like especially at that time, like there's such an EVM narrative, and it still is today, that it's like, why would you even need another tech stack? Which sounds a little bit silly to me as somebody in technology where there's different languages for everything. I think the people who self-selected into that were kind of like, missionary versus mercenary. Like we had a bunch of people who understand why they were there. They're trying to make the best products for their businesses, or whatever it was. It was very authentic. And so just for most people, having this narrative disruption, which was largely what the FTX situation was, and a bunch of other things, FTX was actually just one of many things that happened that year.
Luna, there was
Luna, but there was also like hacks in the Solana ecosystem that were associated with the protocol itself, instead of just the fact that there was a lot of apps, and some of them were just taking, doing things that were shortcutting. Like for a great example was the slow pack. That there was the headlines around that were just like Solana got hacked, blah, 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 all this stuff. But it was eventually just when we finally got down to like root cause, they were leaking their logs. It was a Web2 service called Sentry that does like error handling and log generation for external applications, and that was just leaking private keys. There was nothing to do with the protocol at all. There was nothing to do with the complexity of the protocol either. That was just private keys of anything. If those get leaked, like somebody can just drug everybody using the application. So there's just stuff like that happened like essentially like every week or two for a year. But I think Raj has a bunch of tweets on this, but like there's definitely some benefits to trauma bonding, and just like and really understanding that everybody around you is there for the right reasons. Like if you're here at $8 or whatever, like you're kind of here for the right reasons, and not necessarily and that's like a really great place to be as an ecosystem, that everybody is just trying to build great applications and see what this new technology can where it can find product market fit and add value to the economy.
So for yourself and your role, kind of now you say you're doing everything. Can you talk about like what the day-to-day is like right now?
Yeah, I think a lot of it from my personal time is coordinating all the protocol teams. So people, see Tolly, and he talks a lot about the protocol and stuff, and that's like kind of the most visible. But there's actually 12 different organizations that I think that are contributing to the core protocol every day. So the main ones are Anza, that makes the client that you know and love, but there's a lot of talk about FireDancer as well, which is made by the FireDancer team. And on top of those, there's Jito, Mango, just like basically a ton of other devs around that. Margin is getting way more into the protocol, and then there's a bunch of other that are doing specifications or fuzz testing. So like OtterSec, ETH Zurich even is getting into it. Iger. So it's basically I can just start naming a bunch of organizations, and so this is a very decentralized thing where a lot of it happens on GitHub. But we're still humans, and having some sort of coordination and then architecture reviews of all these things across all of these different protocols. Some of them require deeper collaboration. Some of them just can be asynchronously done. So I help think through all those, and then also work with the ecosystem. So I have some teams that are just incredibly good at like DevRel, or we call it ecosystem engineering, but basically being able to get in and help apps understand how to be successful. Because like you can have your product vision, you can have a really good dev team, but putting all the pieces together can be kind of hard. So we have teams that help a little bit on individual teams, but mostly they just try to understand what tools should be, our gaps are there to help have people operate their business. So something that's coming out of that is something like token extensions, where you can right out of the box, you can just plug and play and add confidential transfers, or they're called transfer hooks. So basically you can like block list or allow lists, or for different applications. So you can have like basically a permissioned KYC bubble of where only people in that can operate on your tokens. So a bunch of things just came out of all these interactions with businesses, like, oh, it would actually be really good. This is a regulated something or other. I need this thing, this feature. And so we would help them get that feature. And so it's great because it's kind of like, we call it like a permissioned environment within a permissionless chain. And so the centralization and permissionless is what, from the chain perspective, means that a business can operate it however it wants. It can be as permissioned as it so desires. And so like we kind of like help navigate all that because the design space is so large that we try to distill that and release things that are still flexible but specific enough that people can use it for their business case.
That makes sense. And I've kind of heard it as almost like I don't know if you would like this, but like almost like the iPhone or the Apple of Web3, because it's very clean, very polished, and very sleek. I don't know how do you feel about that?
I think the analogy does well in that people when you have all these people self-selecting into Solana again, it is almost universally for a product reason. And so I think that ethos of like really delighting your customers and thinking about that first is very Apple-like. I think it also like the monolithic part of it. I think that like where it kind of integrated actually I think is the better way of framing it, where you have all these different connected components. Some of it's off chain, some of it's on chain, are kind of integrated together in one. It feels very seamless. I think those parts make sense. I think the part that don't really make sense is Solana is very permissionless. Anybody can use the data from any other app. There's no vendor lock-in in that way that Apple would have. There's no approval setup that are like all these crazy Apple things. Like all of that just like doesn't exist. So permissionless validator too. Like, I think that's a key distinction between Solana and a lot of other L1s and L2s is that there's anybody can go on Solana and run a validator today. Even with like, I could run it on my Raspberry Pi. I wouldn't be profitable. I would not keep up with the tip of the chain, but you can do it on any hardware. You can do it on anything that you want. It is completely permissionless to validate or run an app. So that's where it really starts departing from iOS. But yeah, the product sense, I think that definitely does.
Why do you think that Solana has been successful when so many others haven't been?
I think there's a combination of like skill and like focusing on why you exist, and then frankly a little bit of luck. And obviously, like even sometimes the disluck is luck, because you can like travel bond and you can kind of figure stuff out. But I think the focus part here is that like why does Solana exist, and really understanding. Everybody's going to say lower transaction fees,
cheaper, faster,
better.
Yeah,
and it's all like referencing Ethereum.
100%.
But I think Solana did a pretty good job of having that simple narrative, but then having the next thing. It's like it's kind of manifested more recently and only possible on Solana. That's kind of like the branded version of it. But even before that, people would just like see something that they could, NASDAQ, decentralized NASDAQ, where anybody in the world can have pretty much symmetric information about a market. I think that is a very compelling vision. Now it's all, even if you're decentralizing it and having multiple servers, having them collated in one place means that everybody has to move to that one place. So having this worldwide distributed thing where no entity owns it, you actually see this a lot in meme coins nowadays. I wouldn't say it's necessarily the aspirational thing, but it's like you have DEXs and perps and lending and renting and like all these different things, and no one entity said, "Oh, we're going to make this cohesive product around meme coins." It just kind of happened, and then you have DeFi next to it. You have you already have NFT and cultural as part of the ecosystem. So all these things just kind of mixed together, ephemerally. And I think really understanding why you exist and kind of drawing that product thinking about that really makes use of that vision. So it started off with decentralized NASDAQ, and all these other things have just been kind of born out of that because of you kind of inspire that product sense, and then honestly, I think it's hard to see this because there's so much noise in the ecosystem, but Solana is truly just differentiated technology. Solana, like as we say here, is doing more transactions today per second than all other blockchains combined, all the public blockchains combined.
You want to repeat that? That's a really good point. Yeah. Solana today is doing more transactions than all public blockchains combined.
Yeah.
That's fucking huge.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of noise because of and people try to like discount that number. People try to say there's failed transactions in there, but those failed transactions are properly processed by the network. It's just like if I was trying to send you $10 but I only had $5, that's a failed transaction. So it's nothing about like the blockchain is processing it correctly. I think most of them are actually DEX related. It's me trying to find some profitable. I trade you $5 of USD. Somebody else does the USDT, and then somebody else does some meme coin and try to find some profit.
Trying to arbitrage.
Yeah, it's an arbitrage. Yeah. So, and when if you can imagine, if you have 9,000 meme coins minted a day and you have multiple DEX.
Is that how many is coming out right now?
Yeah.
It's 9,000 meme coins a day.
Yeah, not individual users buying them. That's individual tokens, and then millions of people per month are buying them.
Dude, that is crazy. 9,000 meme tokens a day.
I think people just
that is insane.
Like, oh, it's just meme coins, but then they don't realize the scale at which this is happening because they don't.
9,000.
There's other networks that don't even have 9,000 transactions of it. And we have 9,000 new tokens that people then buy and ARB and all that stuff. And so things can get really volatile, right? So meme coins are both volatile and there's multiple dexes and stuff. So that's why there's so many ARBs. It's just like people just trying to find profitable transactions. And they'll fire and forget. There's a lot of things to like work out there, like this like subtle nuance. We have a different fee model than Ethereum and all these other things. So there's things in there to work on. I'm not saying it's perfect, but the failed transaction part where all it is just it reaches the slippage. I'm trying to find a profitable transaction. I've in the logic of my transaction that if it's not profitable, don't complete it, and they end up not being profitable around whatever 80% of the time, so they fail. So that's what the failures are. It's the network from the network's perspective though. It's just run through the logic. Oh, this condition wasn't met. Fail. So it is very properly running all these things. There's nothing broken about it at all. It's
FUD.
But the number is so astronomical that people that for whatever reason feel like they need to discount it. Just find whatever they can do to.
How does that make you feel as someone who's building it?
Oh, it's kind of weird. I think
what's the reason though?
I mean, it's just financial. I think is the most of it. I think when you're in academia, where a lot of us came from, I went to masters at UW. So
let's go.
I think there's like some, everybody feels a little bit more collaborative in that environment. You're all just like trying to produce a bunch of papers and stuff. So there's certainly like some battle there, and there's a lot of problems with academia for sure. But you're usually not trying to just like FUD somebody else's research or whatever. But the minute there's like a live token involved and like and narratives really kind of drive things more than anything that's actually been shipped thus far. I actually think Solana is actually starting to break that. I think the actual tokenomics are driving the economy now, not just like the narrative around it.
I completely agree.
Yeah, like people are buying the token to participate in a meme coin economy. Like that's just straight up. That's just commerce. So. Like how sustainable it is, we'll see. Like casinos can last a really long time sometimes, or lotteries are very popular. So maybe this has like legs because I think it is pretty fun. And
it's so interesting. Yeah. It brings new people in. That's the thing too. Everyone I'm talking about, I meet, they're like, I bought this Solana meme coin. Yeah. It's bringing new people in.
Yeah, exactly. I think to be sustainable, the house can't take too much. And the interesting thing about this is that the house here is like influencers and like stuff. There's no actual singular house. The network itself is very minimally extractive, so it actually is way less extractive than like a casino. Most of the time they take like at least 5, if not.
They take all your money.
They try to take all your money. Right? So I think there's for me like it's trying to just like cut through the noise, stay focused. I think a lot of this interview's just been about focus thus far. Like it's to understand the criticism so you can kind of react to it and understand, because there's always going to be truth to it, right? Like maybe people like the valid part of the 75% failures is like actually maybe the economics of the chain should be slightly different so that that you prioritize user transactions. Like, well, what is the economics of the chain that user transactions and that user experience is better? Because that's long term is going to keep everything around. Like, we need retail users to be doing it. If bots are just like absolutely crowding them out, that's probably bad. So there's valid criticism in it. It's not that there's not. It's just the expression of it just is pretty misleading. It's not that the chain isn't functioning correctly. It's just that like as you go, you just have to learn like what is the best thing for the ultimate users and people just doing normal commerce on your chain. And so you have to, like with anything, you have to like understand what the signal, in this case, FUD, means and how does it manifest and like what priorities you have as a, chain, which is like, to get at Solana scale, like as a chain, it means so many different things to so many different groups within the ecosystem. So like from my position, I just try to parse that out. So like one of my positions, like one of the things I do actually is because I'm kind of doing the stuff across the ecosystem and the protocol, is help communicate what's going on. Like if you're core protocol dev, you just see this like barrage of random transactions and stuff, and you're like, where is this coming from? Well, why are people just making this many tokens? And they don't really understand the culture of it or like the business case of it. So part of what I do is actually communicate a lot of this stuff, so that they can understand when they hear this FUD, like why people care about that thing. That's just like a technical detail or whatever it might be. So I guess the other thing that is kind of problematic with it too is this. There's always this. It seems like there's always this attempt whenever there's just like some implementation bug, that instead of it just being an implementation bug, it's some library that's a bottleneck. People try to make it sound like some fundamental flaw, like almost all the time. Like, oh, I knew this was wrong. This is just done. Solana's over. It's at capacity, and like that part of it, I think, is a little bit annoying because I think it doesn't represent the industry very well from the externally. If there's this idea that just like everything's capped at some point and there's just so much room to have to go, then I think it scares people even further about interacting with the technology. When I think the technology is ready today for really good apps, not necessarily like just absolute, like we're not going to put like an MMO, WASD, every single like movement on chain today, but you can make some very good apps on chain for cheap and like that are completely functional, and that solves a lot of issues with like worldwide payments. Like the reason why places like here are so interested in it is because 82% of something or something of this are
remittance
expats.
economy.
Yeah, it's a remittance economy. People are trying to figure out how to like get money in and out here, or like a lot of it's digital. It's like they're really super into swag, like digital swag. It's like there's a lot of things that are like kind of hard to do if you're using a bunch of traditional rails. So like it's ready for those applications. And I think a lot of that like random FUD that makes it sound like things are fundamentally flawed can just spook people, because it's really hard to parse at that point, because you're hearing one thing from one other place, another thing from another, and they don't come from the base understanding of the technology. And of course people are going to get confused if that happens. So I think that part of the FUD is the only part that I'm like actually concerned about. The rest of it, I'm kind of like, okay, people are going to spin whatever they want to do, and they have financial interests. So yeah.
How do you guys view like Ethereum and other L2s? Like, do you see? I mean, this is just kind of interesting because like L2s are essentially created to address the scaling issues with Ethereum, but ultimately, hopefully, Ethereum will address those issues. Hopefully, at some point.
Yeah.
So, do you see like a world where L2s can continue to exist? Like, how do you guys view them?
I think LTs are viable, and LTs are coming to Solana. We already have stuff. When I said off-chain compute, we already have like this concept called compressed NFTs, which is basically storing off-chain data and representing it with a hash on-chain, which is similar to an L2, like functionally, in a lot of ways. And there's actually going to be like more L2s that look like Ethereum L2s, where you have off-chain compute that's not in blocks and it submits hashes. But it's gonna be flexible too. There's gonna be ephemeral side chains where you have like basically a game that just like a side channel where it just does a bunch of signatures that doesn't really necessarily consolidate into blocks, but after the game session it'll just consolidate back to mainnet. And then it runs SVM, like Solana's virtual machine. It runs SVM. It's actually C-level virtual machine if you want to get technical, but it runs that, and then it just consolidates it back when you have the complete signature set on mainnet. So there's these things that people are building that are like off-chain compute or adjacent, ML jobs, all these other things. So it's not, we don't have anything misgivings about L2s, and I think again it just depends on what they're being sold as and what they're used for. Right now they're being sold as like scaling Ethereum, like there's all these like associations with Ethereum, we are Ethereum, when a lot of them are currently at least single sequencers that don't have fraud proofs. They don't have escape hatches. Like you can't permissionlessly bridge from one of these, many of the L2s back to the L1. And I think that's like, again, a little bit misleading to what the consumer is actually getting when they use them, or especially a business is actually getting when they use them. There's one sequencer that can censor their transactions. And this isn't some mythical thing. Like, a lot of these single sequences are businesses that are sanctioned or under regulated areas. Like if they could just start censoring your transactions. And so I think a lot of businesses don't really necessarily understand, and users don't necessarily understand what the active state of the industry, but the scaling versions, and I think it's fine. I think they're doing it too early. So I guess let's take a step back. I think my actual opinion on the situation is that you need to be able to scale some part of your backend to your application. So if I'm going to run a big trading marketplace or I don't know, even a game or something, I need to be able to have that scale with my application, or else I'm going to have to figure out how to fragment even within my own application. And so like, okay, which part of my marketplace do I put on this chain that can only do 90 TPS, and which one am I going to do on this part? Like that starts getting really weird for me as an app developer. It'd be way nicer if my chain just scaled to 100,000 TPS, so I don't even have to worry about that aspect. So I think they are fragmenting like too early. Even in their end states, they're talking about basically the amount of throughput is not even what Solana is doing today. We're talking about like thousands of TPS at most, and so I think that would be pretty scary for me as an app developer that's trying to scale like insanely. I think it works really well for certain types of applications, though. Things uh, like DNS, like domains and like understanding IDs, or like aggregating large amounts of data into like a bundle. Like I think those things can make a lot of sense. But as this like execution environment, it's a little bit different than what we're trying to do. So I think their risk is if they ever get a successful application on any of their layers, they're just going to hit constraints. Nothing to do with even Ethereum mainnet. It's just there's a like, and that's probably the reason why I'm at Solana. I think it is a very valuable problem to be able to scale with applications, so you can realize a really diverse economy that contains multiple applications, or else you're going to basically like to use like a lot of people talk about like blockchains or cities, or else you're just going to have a bunch of really fragmented small cities, and none of the cities are going to be able to grow outside of a little box that they have. They have to figure out how to like maybe make the roads between them better, but that's about all you can really do as an application. So I think
That's a really good
yeah.
analogy.
And so I think that's like I think they're actually starting to see that today, and it's probably just going to get even more pronounced. Where I think the meme economy that is formed on Solana and Deepin, to be clear, it's not just memes. Like Deepin and games.
IONet is one of our partners.
Great, yeah,
Epic.
Exactly. So it's like I think you can look at memes because it's the easiest to like discount as some sort of fad, but like there's a lot of like very legit technologies, and like Helium has I think 85,000 subscribers that. Their proof of coverage, their subscription service, all of their payments in and out of all the Helium hotspots. It's a decentralized internet. And they work with T-Mobile in Seattle to serve that internet that pays through those 85,000 subscribers are paying through T-Mobile. It's a T-Mobile service, but they're on the back end they're using the hotspots that Helium node providers, hotspot providers are serving out. So this is just a consumer application. Nobody's speculating. Nobody's doing anything like that. It's just 87,000 people are getting internet for $20 a month on their phones. So there's plenty of stuff that's going on in Solana that has nothing to do with meme coins or even speculation. And I think that's where we think the power comes from. And you can really only do that in a cohesive way if you have vertical scaling. And so I think that's why it's the valuable problem to solve, in my opinion.
No, I completely agree. And I mean, I've been in crypto for a long time. We always knew Ethereum was going to have these scaling issues. Super interesting. All right, let's bring it back to kind of where we are here. We're in Dubai.
Yeah.
Like, why is Solana coming to token?
I think there's a few like regulatory things involved. Like a lot of countries in the world. I mean, it is a disruptive technology, and it's also been used nefariously. I have a lot of opinions on this. I think that a lot of the regulatory uncertainty creates a lot of the nefariousness. Like you have it's harder for good actors. Like I'm sure you've been spooked a few times. Like you run a very fine business, right? And I'm sure even you've been spooked a few times. Like, should I have that person on that show? I don't know if it's a scam. Like if you had a lot more regulatory clarity on like what you couldn't say in certain things, you'd probably expand your business in ways that you're currently a little bit skittish on. And I think that is holding the industry back. So part of the reason to come to someplace like here is they are really working with a lot of Solana applications and founders on giving them very clear regulatory guidance. And so there's partly that. Also just like the business here, I think there's a lot of interest in RWA in particular, which we have. There's two different organizations within the Solana ecosystem, Bridge Split and Republic Crypto, and probably even several more that I don't know about, that are making RWA standards and RWA platforms for people to build their issuance and other RWA things across like, commodities like whiskey to real estate to synthetic assets like stock derivatives and stuff. So I think that is like a really exciting time, and again and they're doing all that with more regulatory clarity. So we're just really excited to be involved in that conversation and see what we can do to help.
Probably leading that conversation in a lot of ways.
Yeah, for sure.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Did you buy any meme coins?
I mean, certainly.
Let's go.
I'm not
what I wanted to hear.
I'm not a big trader. I certainly not. I'm dog fooding.
Okay.
Some of my dog fooding has been less profitable than others, but it's good because like last night we were at a party and we were just like talking about product ideas, and from our position we're just kind of like we can make a few things, just like reference implementations or whatever, and then we like let our community run with it. But it's clear that everybody sitting around like understands the tech so well. I think that again, like there's something about like the Solana ecosystem where you kind of selected into it. People get it. Like people within Foundation and outside, they understand like, okay, like the mindset of what works today, and you just have these fantastic conversations about, okay, this is what works today. We can test this out. If this works, that's great. It actually works with RWA. It works with this marketplace. It works with like you can start tying these things together in these like really like some of it's degenerate for sure, but some of it is actually like very very functional and is like improving it on the way that different things are sold or rented or leased or all that stuff. So I think that's kind of why we're here to be involved in those conversations.
What would you say to a developer who's maybe just learning about crypto? They're a Web 2 developer or whatever, just a dev, and they're trying to enter the ecosystem and they're interested in Solana.
That's good. Well, I think the first magic point that most people see is they do one thing, scary or whatever. Today you still, on most applications, still have to interact with, you have to store your seed phrase or whatever. So just like, first is to get over that. Maybe use a wallet that has a kinder login for, it's more similar to like a social login or Google or whatever. But once you get kind of by that, I think the magic moment is when you buy something on something or you interact with some app and you go to the next app and you have the same exact assets. It's like, okay, I can kind of do that with my Apple Wallet or my Google Wallet. I can go to site to site, or maybe Shopify can do this in some place, or Shop. They can do that just with credit card, just with payments. But the fact that I'm like now doing it with just literally any asset and any site is picking how to display that asset. Like I go from one marketplace to the other and it's like all just there. Like I think that's at least the kind of the aha moment where you're like, oh, interesting. These businesses are using the same backend. Like that is kind of wild. And I think being able to do that and like kind of like you mean like humans kind of start arbitraging between different marketplaces and stuff. Like I think that's like a pretty interesting moment. So I'd encourage it basically and the reason why I would encourage that to a developer too is to understand what it means to have the same backend as a bunch of other applications, and that would really affect product decisions basically. And I actually think that's where a lot of Web 2 companies get it wrong, is they just want to close off and be separated from everything else, and you kind of lose out a lot of the real power of blockchain. It's like to give up that like a little bit of power over your asset or whatever you're issuing, and then you get a lot of these network effects in return. So first kind of get a sense of what that means as a developer, and then like I don't know, just start building something. If you hopefully you get semi-inspired by that thing. Maybe it's simple as just reading data from the chain through an indexer and knowing how to parse it. I think that's like a pretty decent first step or something like that. But then eventually try to ship a whole end-to-end application. Use some on-chain code all the way to some front end. Don't worry about making it pretty. Don't worry about expanding the feature set to just take over the world. Just find something that's silly and fun that you can kind of ship end-to-end. There's tons of guides out there. Soldev.app is a really good resource on Solana. They have a bunch of cookbooks and stuff. Our DevRel does an amazing job of giving you a little inspiration along the way. But I think learning as a developer is usually finding some motivating use case and getting out of tutorial hell and actually shipping something.
Tutorial hell, I like that. Yeah. No, that's super cool. Okay, were you involved with the Solana phone at all?
Sure. I'm not that close. That is actually a separate entity of Labs Foundation, and we are very close with Labs. Like they're obviously a great member of the ecosystem, and we help them with like some of their SDKs and stuff. But they are certainly their own business.
What do you have one?
I do. not on me, but
That's super cool.
I use it when I'm in Seattle. Actually, so because it's on a T-Mobile service, it's actually really good service in Seattle. So I just have I just look at my work phone when I'm in Seattle. They actually just now expanded to international. I should plug this, I guess. The Helium service. So I could be taking it international. I just haven't set it up yet.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out too as a fellow Seattleite. Just to kind of, I guess, kind of wrap this up, where do you think that the future of Solana is headed?
So I think the ecosystem, you're going to start seeing this ecosystem mature more and more and more. And I think there's a chance that just some part of that maturity, it's going to start just being fun enough and not just financial that it starts becoming culturally relevant in certain areas. And I think when that happens, like
Can you give an example?
yeah, so like I think if right now you have meme tokens, some of those meme tokens are probably just really funny. And if there's just like a certain, I actually have a few ideas I've been pitching a few people, but like once that you have a way to get people to create their own memes better, like people are already excited about creating their own memes, and now it's like price discovery. There's some adjacent thing to that that's just really accessible to modern, like most people. You just go on a website, you make a meme, you can choose potentially to spend a couple dollars to mint it as a token or not, but it's all in one platform. You just either do it and you just have some sort of haha, or you actually see like, oh, what would other people value this? You can kind of just like see what other people value it or whatever. There's some adjacent thing to what's going on right now that's actually very accessible to most people, and they would find it kind of fun. And so there's like that side of it I think is interesting. And then the cool thing about Solana is that you have tens of thousands of people that with the entrepreneurial spirit that will help find that gap, find new users and find people that would like, well, how do you become culturally relevant? There's tens of thousands of people figuring that out in the Solana ecosystem that are building, actually, not just consumers that are actually building for it. I think you'll also see there's just legitimate businesses. I don't want to discount that. There's a lot of FUD that Solana is just meme coins or whatever. There's like the DeepIn ecosystem is really popping off. I went to a DeepIn meetup last night. It wasn't even a Solana event, but like most of the things there were Solana, and they're all talking about how to collaborate with each other. There's basically developing a whole AI backend stack on Solana. You have data gathering with like Hive Mapper and a few other like Natix, like basically a bunch of these data gathering things. Geo.net is doing stuff like. And then you have annotation with SNES1. You have a bunch of compute, IO.net, Asana, there's Render. There's all these like, and then even like serving is starting to do that with Dane and a bunch of other things. So you're basically starting to get this whole stack like that is cheaper. It's like, interoperable with each other. So I think you're going to start seeing those network effects of all those as they mature. Games is always like near and dear to my heart. Like there's a ton like Nine Heroes, Star Atlas is always shipping new things. Like there's tons of games applications that are really starting to ship. And I think what you're seeing here is that they might actually be crossover collaborative. Like imagine if somebody in one of the games app wants to do something, and actually the app could tap into some other annotation service to provide some machine learning model for the game. And it could just be like closed loop. Like it's just like boom, all of a sudden you have like on one shared system, payments go across, everything happens, and you can create these really, really tight experiences. In fact, even one of the things that's GPU adjacent is called Shaga, which is using those compute boxes for games. So you can actually have like sidecar services and host your actual games. So what I just said was a lot, but that's actually kind of the point. There's just so many shots on goal, so many people doing legitimately interesting things in the Solana ecosystem. I didn't even mention payments and like things that Visa's doing. And so like I think that is pretty unique. That it's all happening and people are kind of collaborating together to see what works and we'll see what solves for businesses, solves for consumers, all across the economy. I think on the tech side, you're going to see a lot of like pretty awesome things. Like this is where this is my baby. It's probably too technical for most people watching this, but there's a second client coming out for Solana called Fire Dancer. It's made from this really cracked team. Kevin Bowers is like a phenomenal like networking dev, like high frequency trading type of just optimization dev group. And once Solana has 2 clients then that's a lot more resiliency, redundancy. It hardens the network, and the performance gains you get from having a second eye that is that like really hyper focused is just going to be insane. Like Solana is already doing very well, but it's so much room to grow. There's so many parts of the protocol to be improved that I think over the next probably like year and a half, 2 years, you're going to see just like fundamentally different changes of what can be done on chain and at what speeds. So like we're kind of in this race. We know that our ecosystem is so dope, and they're just going to be figuring out stuff and getting adoption. And so then our like protocol side of the house is like how can we beat them there and become performant enough that we can get to hundreds of thousands of transactions per second, and so to allow those businesses to thrive. So yeah, I think that's like such a neat interaction.
It almost sounds like to me like a new internet.
Yeah,
Almost.
that's actually what I kind of like what I call it. It's so you have right now you do the routing is decentralized. So the reason that the military originally made the internet is so that they could communicate even if one node went down, you'd have another route, right? So it's just like this decentralized routing system. So that is still pretty decentralized. Google owns a lot of it or whatever, but you and Cloudflare, but you don't really have any sort of data layer in there that's decentralized. It's just centralized like data center services that host entire stacks. So you have how much of the internet is just like on AWS in like some data center, and people don't realize this, but not actually that much of Solana is on AWS. Only about 12 to 14%. I haven't looked in, but it's in the low teens, and it's because a lot of things, but actually the higher hardware requirements to be profitable makes it so you want to either host your own node or have it into like a bare metal custom setup. So those end up being like pretty diversified. So it's in hundreds of data centers. I think it's like 230 data centers is distributed for Solana, and different entities own them, and that's actually way more distributed than even Ethereum nodes are, or even Bitcoin. Most of Bitcoin is mined through like these large conglomerates. But anyway, so I think you're just basically going to see that this really diverse ecosystem of like operators and the ecosystem participants is just going to get more and more mature, and there's going to be more and more interactions between them.
Thank you so much for the interview. This was one of my favorites. You all already know what Solana is, but honestly, the main things that stood out from this: 9,000 meme coins a day.
Yeah.
The most transactions processed every day than all other public blockchains combined.
Yeah.
If there's two things you can take out from this video, those are insane. Like that is insane. So thank you so much for your time,
Like,
and see you guys soon.